Yeah, crank it.
Oh wait, can you even hear that?
Barely.
Okay, let me redo that then.
Yeah. Welcome to the Visual Kei Podcast. I'm your host, Fredrik, also known as Whirling Black, and with me today, as usual, I have...
Your co-host, Alexi.
And I'm your podcast editor, James, also known as Plant Online, and I'm really looking forward to editing out a bunch of coughing during this episode, because Fredrik is sick.
Yeah, hi. I caught the latest trend, sadly, the good old Corona.
Wow, so trendy.
And that was just right after you got your microchip implant.
Yeah, it's very unlucky.
The 5G didn't protect you.
I had the first vaccine shot, and then like less than a week after that, I started feeling sick and tired. I mean,
did your internet connection improve?
I wish, but I already had like 1,000 megabits per second, so I can't say it would have improved.
This is a shame.
Yeah, maybe my mobile internet, but I haven't been outside yet, so I can't confirm.
Yeah, I mean, I was already scouting for a new host. So,
yeah.
Apologies to anyone that I DM'd. The gig is off. Maybe if I kill him, get a chance to come back. We'll see. I'll keep in touch.
Yeah, so I'm still feeling a bit under the weather, but hopefully we will be able to record this episode in as neat as possible way. And on that topic, we are going to continue the theme from last episode and just continue where we left off with Deer and Grey at the turn between 98 and 99 during their major debut. Okay, so naturally, since the theme is their major debut, this episode will focus on their album GAUZE. And we're going to do a track-by-track sort of review and some takes on the songs.
Yeah, we'll give a brief overview about the songs, what they think about it, and then also jump into all the future live iterations of the songs that have been on official and unofficial recordings. Right,
and also we're going to... No, never mind. That's actually everything. Well, I'm just like, well, yeah, and also there's this feature, and then I was like, nah, you actually covered all the features. Yeah. So it's important to remember that the album just didn't like come out of nowhere, but they actually started very strongly with like a 3-single simultaneous release in the early months of 99. And all 3 were produced by Yoshiki of X Japan, which is a pretty big deal, I would say.
And to this day, these are their best-selling singles, hands down.
Yeah, I believe that Yurameki is their absolutely best-selling single of all time. I have it written in my sheets as fact check, but I guess I never did, so I'm just going to take your word for it.
No, actually, I checked this not too long ago, so yeah, it's basically these singles in order, and Yurameki is number 1.
Yeah, which makes sense. We're going to discuss the track later, but I mean, it was a very solid first major output, and it's kind of remarkable to think about that it came out less than 2 years after the band had their first live.
Wait, what were the other 2 singles? Yurameki and which other 2?
All right, it was Yurameki, Sun, and Akuro no Oka.
Okay.
Yeah, there was also singles for Yokan and Cage as well, so I was like, which one was it that was released alongside Sun and Yurameki? But yeah, then I remember it was Akuro no Oka.
Akuro no Oka surprises me because that is such a long song, and it seems like an album track. That doesn't strike me as something they'd release as a single.
Well, at the same time, you got also Zan.
Yeah.
Which is not exactly a chart topper.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the choice of songs for the singles was kind of like purposeful. Like they tried to showcased the different sides of the band. Like Sun was this very aggressive, frantic track, and Akrun Oka was this beautiful ballad, and Juramäki was like the pop hit, sort of.
Yeah.
So for people who were unfamiliar with the band, if they got all three, they would have a pretty like good idea of the width of the band's sound, I guess you could say. But yeah, so they were produced and recorded by Yoshiki of X Japan, and I believe all of these songs were actually recorded in America at one of his studios in Los Angeles or San Francisco, I'm unsure, but one of those.
In California.
Yeah, in California, and you could definitely tell that no expenses were spared, because the production value in general on this album, before we go into the individual tracks, are just insane. It's definitely a huge step up from their material before this.
No doubt, and you can also see this in the numerous music videos that accompany the album. Probably the most interesting of which is the one that we're going to talk about right now, Mode of Adam.
Yes, as you noticed, we played a short sample of their intro track. It's pretty unremarkable as far as intros go, music-wise, but the music video is absolutely insane.
So it turns out that actually both of us had written in the notes that it featured brilliant PS1 cutscene graphics.
Yeah. I was thinking that too.
And I think it's just very typical of this sort of like strangely polygonal, is that the word? Like
polygonal.
Yeah, like it's very it's very 3D, but it's still very much like basic polygons.
You know, the helicopters and shit in the beginning reminded me of the beginning of Final Fantasy VII, actually, when they're kind of going over the landscape and it's like super dark, and it has that dystopian Y2K sci-fi horror feel, and they actually weren't, well, Sons to Horror maybe, but they weren't the only band around this time sort of channeling that similar vibe. A lot of the Nagoya bands had turned into sci-fi themes, and I think Pierrot is probably, theme-wise, conceptually the closest to what we have here. But one thing that it is missing is the Tetsuo the Iron Man mouth monsters coming out of this guy who's been executed in an electric chair, which sort of begs the question as well. Is this like the first instance of like body horror in Visual Kei?
I'm not sure about that. I think some of the older Kuroyume PVs had some blood and violence in it as well.
Yeah, they do, but it's kind of like gothic, you know?
It
doesn't have that like grotesque horror movie feel. It's more the suicidal aristocratic vampire in a public restroom, like Death Mask.
Yeah, that is true. The distinction should be there. Yeah, and it might be. I don't have any examples of an earlier video, at least, which utilizes this kind of visuals. And I think just the fact that it's a completely animated intro as well, which I assume was very expensive at the time, also shows they had a huge budget for this. And I mean, there's a PV for every song on this album. Just that fact is pretty mind-boggling. I think it has not been repeated since.
Oh, no, I think there are some examples of this. I just can't remember, but, you know, on the Osaka Yohal DVD, you actually have the menu with the things coming out of the electric chair.
Yeah. I was actually watching my copy of the physical DVD while preparing for this recording, and I didn't remember those, so it was a fond reunion. And during the Mode of GAUZE tour in 2014, they actually built that weird sort of tortured sheriff throne that the guy is being tortured in, and you could sit in it and take photos during the tour if you wanted to.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, that was a huge line though, so despite attending all shows but one, I never actually did it.
Damn it. Yeah, well, I think we can conclude that the intro itself is not super interesting. It's sort of kind of typical for the time in Visual Kei, but the visuals are very interesting, and they will be repeated sort of throughout all the music videos for this album.
Yeah, I'm guessing, James, that you didn't have any musical comments on this intro.
No, not really, but that PV really stood out to me. I can't believe this song got a PV. Did even the last song get a PV, like Mode of Eve? Like, it's like 5 seconds.
It's not actually 5 seconds because the majority of Mode of Eve is actually tacked onto the end of Akuro no Oka on this album. So Akuro no Oka isn't actually 9 minutes, it's considerably shorter, and then there's Mode of Eve at the end of it.
Oh, that's right.
But yeah, and I want to mention also that they used this very outdated graphics during the intro for the 2014 concerts as well. When they were walking on the stage, they played this video in the background.
As they should have.
Good.
As they should.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was kind of funny because that was one of those times when you could tell how much time had passed. Because, when you just see filmed footage of bands from the late 90s or early 2000s, it's not always super obvious. But as soon as you see something that's computer generated, it suddenly feels extremely dated.
And in a way, if you compare to Macabre, it's not just the visuals. The music on this album is super dated compared to what they released afterwards.
Yeah, but...
not in a bad way, of course, but
yeah.
it's sort of par for the course for the era. Whereas then when they made Mode of Macabre, you could reasonably think that they composed a lot of it yesterday.
Yeah, I see what you mean with that. It has less of those 90s tropes. Okay, so let's head on to the first real track of the album.
I still remember the time when I didn't hate background shouting in Visual Kei.
Like the chanting.
In this, it's great.
I guess it's not chanting.
Yeah, it's more like shouting. Yeah, just
Yeah.
And I think it was actually done by the other members of the band, along with a bunch of random bodies or something. There's a credit
that's
list.
right. Yeah, they got people featured on this.
Yeah, there's like a credit list of random like studio executives or whatever that's also shouting.
Great. All the salarymen in a choir.
Yeah, but honestly, I think that this track, which is called Shrine no Izu, is one of the most technically impressive tracks on the album in terms of the guitar playing.
Bonus points for pronouncing the German. And this song does feature one of my favorite Visual Kei tropes of all time, the counting in German.
Yeah, it's very iconic, and I think this. Well, I'm pretty sure this was the first time I came across this trope in my life. It was the first song I heard that featured this kind of Eins, zwei, drei, vier thing.
Yeah, I was trying to trace it actually on Twitter like a long time ago, and so far the best theory is that the band to use it first was Z-Kill, and then that was taken from like a manga. But actually, I don't remember if manga was first or Z-Kill was first. Anyway, around there.
Yeah.
Probably the highlight of the song and kind of the album in general is the dueling guitars. The riffing has improved significantly from the previous releases.
Yeah. James, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I really like the guitars. I wrote that they're very sharp and prickly.
Yeah.
I get what you mean with prickly, yeah.
It's just a really iconic song. Like, I remember this song. As soon as the intro kicked on, I was like, oh yeah. And Kyo's voice is really fun in this. Like, lots of like weird expressions while he's singing.
Yeah, he shines in a track like this. I prefer this throat shredding to the stiffer, stoic, Visual Kei aristocratic vampires style that he would have on a bunch of the tracks, like even Yokan, even Yurameki to an extent, where he's like singing. This song, he's a little bit more spontaneous. It feels like, he's just screaming without like a plan. You know what I'm saying? Like he's screaming from the heart. It sounds corny, but I wonder if it makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, and I think that also the length of the track is very nice. Like it doesn't overstay its welcome, and given it's like a very fast banger, I think it's nice that it doesn't drag.
Yeah, unlike some tracks, there's some long tracks on this album.
Yeah, and I mean, songs like, for example, Sun, which I'm a huge fan of, that sometimes back in the day they would drag out to like 20 minutes of length.
Boy.
Yeah, and I'm not all about that.
Yeah, as they also did on the Osaka Yohal
Yeah, exactly.
DVD. They extended it. This one perfect length, and
And I think what you mentioned about the twin guitars is also important because it's sort of like a signature sound in general of this album, that the guitars complement each other very well. I remember when I was a kid, when I was trying to learn these songs on guitar, and I tried to play just, one of the parts, and I never got it to sound right. I always felt like this doesn't sound like the song at all, because the sound of the guitars are so important together that when you play just one part, it doesn't sound like the song at all.
Yeah, and I think the guitar, like the style is a lot more original than, let's say, in Zan. That's a very obvious Nagoya nod. Whereas something like this, I would struggle to find similar stuff in Visual Kei.
And it's also worth mentioning that it's one of the last songs written for the album as well, which could be why. Because, I mean, a lot of these songs were around already in 97, like Raison d'être, Masochist of Decadence, Sun. All of those were already around in 97, and Sumitobatsu was written mid 98 already.
Yeah, so you can hear their, first of all, like as guitarists, they're progressing quite rapidly.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's fair that some of these later penned songs feel a bit more complex, and certainly has more nods towards what would come later. Like some of the riffing does remind me a bit of something like Miyaku.
Yeah, and quick word about the PV. It's one of my favorites from the collection. There's a purple-haired Kyo standing in a ruin with a baseball bat. It's a cool vibe, and he's tied to some sort of a generator that looks like it's, again, from a PS1 game where he's supposed to find the battery from some box that you have to solve a chess puzzle to get to.
Yeah, it's. I mean, all of these PVs are absolutely iconic. Even if they didn't have any storyline or whatever, it's just their looks and the look of the videos are all iconic.
Yeah, and speaking of iconic, there is one really good cover of the song by Mary, which was released on, was it a Deer and Grey debut album? Sorry, tribute album?
No, it was one of those. Cover albums.
V-Rock something.
Crush or something
that's
like
a good
that.
cover, actually. Mary, they're super talented.
Yeah.
When they got good songs.
It was the same one, I think, it was in the same series at least as the Speed cover that Nine Goats Blackout did.
Which was also nice.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't listened to these enough. The Mary cover is kind of neat. It's makes a very sort of jazzy take on this song.
Yeah, you think so? I thought it was kind of punky. Well, either way, it suits them.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's punky, but it has some swing influences as well.
Well, that's Mary, I guess. It's those two things.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so that was Yurameki, and I have a very funny anecdote about this that I want to share before we get into the discussion. When I was a kid, I never really showed my family any Visual Kei because I thought that was dumb and scary. And
that's the correct opinion to have.
Yeah, I mean, I knew they wouldn't like it, and they didn't approve of my posters and all that, so I didn't want to put the music in front of them, so to speak, but one time when I was alone at home, I was listening to the GAUZE album on speakers, and then my sister came home right when Yurameki was starting, and her impression was that it sounded like a Greek Schlager.
What?
Yeah, she said that the intro to Yurameki sounds like a Greek Schlager. That was her impression of.
That's a refined take.
Yeah, I'm not sure where she got that from, but I mean, I can kind of see it. It's a very poppy intro, it just sort of bursts onto there very fast.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's better than the fucking opinions of my classmates. It's who are these fucking trannies? Guys, no, it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say it's the most poppy song on the album. I mean, in competition with a few other tracks, but I think it has the most pop sensibilities, and you can tell that they were trying to go for a big seller here.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, Visual Kei showed how readily it could adapt to a poppier sound without sort of compromising its aesthetic statement, I guess, or at least the core of it. And I will mention Kuroyume a lot of times during this episode, but it has to be mentioned. Romance of Scarlet might be, with For Dear single, might be one of the first attempts at like genuine pop music in Visual Kei, and both this song and then Yokan later on remind me of the hits from Feminism.
That's a fair comparison, I would say. I certainly think they looked more towards Kuroyume than they looked towards, for example, other bands of the era, since they're known Kuroyume fans.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, a funny story. I was going over like all the interviews that I could find, and I found one from the GAUZE era given, and Kyo says that right from the start, when he was in indies bands, he was like, when can I become Glay? So he basically was going like already into that direction, like he wanted to be huge, and I guess at that time they had like no issues doing stuff that was super poppy, and you can hear it in here. I think the pop songs in here are much better than the preceding singles, like Isle, for example.
Yeah, I think you could say that this was definitely an attempt to get a big, like we mentioned last time, an attempt to get a big following, and I mean it certainly worked, so kudos to them.
Yeah, and the solo, by the way, is incredible.
Yeah.
It's like distorted over the beat that comes on, which is like very Pierrot-esque. Similar vibes to the intro, which makes me appreciate the solos on here a lot more compared to the ones that they have now, which are kind of formulaic.
Yeah, I did like the guitar sounds on this track a lot, but overall this one didn't really stand out to me that much. It's definitely not my favorite on this album.
I get that. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't feel as ambitious as some of the other tracks. It's more written with a large audience in mind, so I think it needs to sort of keep to certain pop hooks and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm actually happy that we are like finally disagreeing on something during the 5-episode run of this podcast, because I think it's one of the best songs on here, probably. I think there's a lot of like small details that have grown on me throughout the years. And by the way, the solo on the Osaka Johal Live is even weirder. It sounds like it's not even distorted. It's submerged underwater. It's great.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning as well that they made a piano intro for this song, for the tour and for that Osaka Johal concert. And they actually brought the very same piano intro back for the Mode of GAUZE tour, which I thought was very neat.
Yeah, the piano is awesome too. Like that shows Yoshiki's fingerprints.
Yeah, definitely.
By the way, Kyo has the same facial expression throughout the entire PV. He's moving his mouth like it's a fish in an aquarium. It's kind of weird, but it fits his performance.
Yeah. Okay, so that was raison d'être. No, how would you say it? Raison d'être?
I'm not gonna try.
Yeah.
Something like something in French.
Yeah, I mean the band misspelled it, so I'll just say raison d'être.
Yeah, exactly. If they misspell it, it's free game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think so.
So what's worth mentioning about this song is that it was a very early song. They played it already in October of '97 in a slightly different version, but still completely recognizable. I would have to say I prefer that version, but I think this album version is absolutely amazing too. One of my absolutely favorite songs.
Its age is so weird. Like, it's the strangest song to me in their entire discography. It's a little penicillin-esque, and not just because of the dancey beat, but a little bit of the riffs as well, which makes me hope for like a Dear and Grace take on their Ippatsu Atero PV, where they're like rocking out with watts of cash and driving a limo in LA. But now, again, they're in a BDSM dungeon and everyone is vomiting.
Yeah, and the girl is cutting her eye out.
Yeah, exactly. Like.
But yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, this is one of those tracks that if you don't play this at a party, you don't know how to have a VK party. This is absolutely essential party song.
Yeah, it's really good. It's probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. The guitar solo is really good on it, and I like the electronics in it a lot.
Yeah, and the electronics doesn't overstay its welcome or try to take over. It's always utilized kind of sparingly.
Yeah,
in a
like
nice
it's not
way.
an electronic song, but it definitely has a lot of like synths in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it still fits thematically, like within the album, you know, like how the rest of it sounds, despite being the most electronic out of everything.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's kind of sad that this is one of those songs I feel like the band has never really been that enthusiastic about themselves.
Yeah, that's why I think it's the strangest song in the entire discography. It doesn't, even though it fits within the context of this album, but it would be difficult, I guess, integrate into a live setting again.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like when I went to the Mode of GAUZE tour, I did see this song live like 9 or 10 times or something. I forgot.
Jesus
and,
Christ.
yeah, and I mean, despite it being one of my favorite songs of all time, the live versions didn't really leave that big of an impression on me. It was one of those songs that kind of was just, oh, this is neat, but I never felt like it was, a great live track, mostly because the band didn't really do much when they played it.
It's a young man's song. When it's played on the Mode of DVD, to me, that's usually when I zone out a little bit. It's nice, but not a hugely impactful performance.
It could be like you said, that it's, they don't have the same energy anymore. But like I think someone mentioned that the guitar solo is amazing, and I definitely have to agree with that. It's one of my favorites.
No, for sure. They should just be young and sexy when they're playing it. Like, there's a really Kyo has great hair on this one, and it's unfortunate that there's so many good hair color combinations on the GAUZE PVs that they never do again.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I mean, they imagine how much damage their hair must have taken filming all those PVs in a couple of months and just changing hair.
I wish they would have filmed all of it in one day.
Alright, so that was 304 Goshitsu Hakushi no Sakura.
I was wondering how are you going to say that. If you're going to say like Sanbyakiyon or Sanzeroyon or something.
Actually, always growing up, I always just called it 304.
Yeah.
That was like the title I used until people didn't really get what I was trying to say, and then I just called it Hakushi no Sakura.
Yeah.
Oh, I just said like Goshitsu no something.
Yeah, it's a lot of people have different takes on this to get around the fact that no one really bothered to look up how those three numbers are supposed to be pronounced.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's not, like that one band which was on Undercode, which in Finnish goes 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. That's just how you would pronounce it.
Oh, yeah, Ichini Zero Ichini.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Also known as 12012.
Yeah.
Okay, but gotta say again, one of my favorite songs on the album, that acoustic riff with the fucking fantastic bass line and sweeping guitar is just brilliant. Great stuff.
Yeah, I agreed. And I also might say that it's one of the most mature tracks on the album. And I think that's why in later years it's one of the songs from the album I feel the band seems to enjoy performing live the most. Like during the entire GAUZE tour, I felt like it was one of those tracks where everyone kind of came alive a bit more and Kyo gave more of his performance and stuff like that.
Yeah, there was at one point that meme that they never play any songs from the GAUZE era, which wasn't true. And this was one of the songs that they did bring out once or twice, I believe.
Yeah, they played an acoustic version of this in 2007, and then they brought it back for the GAUZE tour. And then they played it also in 2004, but that's kind of early. And also at some fan club only shows in 2015. Was 1 year after the GAUZE tour.
Okay. They didn't play it in America?
No. It's
okay.
So
I think it was just Akuronooka.
And Schwein no Izu.
Right, yeah.
Those two were played in America during those 2-day lives in 2009, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not interesting for our audience at all, I think. But yeah, Yeah, but I have to say, like I said, it's a very mature track, and I love the utilization of acoustic guitars as well to create an additional layer. And it has that the main riff has this kind of like slight edge and mental patient vibe to it somehow. It gives this sort of madness feeling to it.
Yeah, I do really like the acoustic layer in this song, and really weird comparison, but it kind of made me think of My Bloody Valentine, particularly with that song Sometimes, where it's just like, it's mostly distorted guitar, but there's just like a layer of acoustic guitar playing the same thing, and it's really nice.
Yeah, layers is a good way of describing this song, I would say.
I would love to concur, but I only listen to music with Japanese people in it. So
Well, there's a Japanese cover album of My Bloody Valentine, Loveless.
oh, really?
Yeah, I think Goat Bed is on it, actually.
Oh, well. I have to mention the acoustic solo in the song is really nice as well.
Yeah, and I guess the acoustic nature of it also led to the other version on Kyo's poem book.
Yeah, but that wasn't another version of this song. It was a completely different song that just happened to share the name.
Oh, really? They recycled this title?
No, they didn't recycle this title. They recycled the first part. It's called like 304 Goshitsu Shita Toyoru.
Oh, so is it like connected to the song lyrically or something?
I believe so. Don't quote me on that, but I believe so. And so yeah, but it's not. It's not a version of this song. The instruments and stuff is completely different.
Yeah, that's true. I was kind of hoping that I would get to talk about it a little bit because I like that one a lot as well.
Yeah, well, we will probably do an episode on Kyo's solo works at some point.
I was like, oh, well, actually, there's Sukekyo, never mind. Well, it's not really solo, though.
Well, it's his solo project, so might as well include his poem books in that.
Well, either which way, there's something that they did pioneer, and it's Wheelchair K. A fantastic music video.
Yeah, later most famously known from Meiji Bray, I guess.
Yeah, no, there's other ones. There's also the guy from Kizu has also sojourned into the public eye on a wheelchair. There's also a very funny effect where the flowers that were just dropped caught a flame, and it feels like they had already run out of editing budget, that they just needed to come up with something real quick.
Going back to this song, I gotta say, there's something about the intro of this song that just makes me want to skip it. Like when it came on, I was like, and I just wanted to press next. Is that a hot take?
Oh, mate.
That's pretty hot.
Probably. I mean, I love the intro, so I am not going to say I understand, but maybe it drags a bit if you're not a fan of it. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'm not super into this song, to be honest. I think this is one of the least appealing ones for me.
Oh, I see. I'm kind of surprised because I thought it would be one of your favorites based on, the heavy layering and everything.
It's technically interesting. Like, there's a lot to say about it and appreciate, but it's just like, it's not one of my go-to tracks on this album at all.
Yeah, I get
bro,
that.
this is why you're just a producer.
I wanted to say as well, before we move on, that I think the drum work on this song is amazing as well. Some of those fills are really nice.
Oh, actually, you know, maybe the best on the album even?
Yeah, I would say so. And I mean, Shinya gets such a bad rep these days. I feel like I have to say when he's doing something nice.
No, yeah, and well, a lot of the really good stuff is actually on the first half of their career, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Shinya works much better as a rock drummer than a metal drummer. So.
Oh, yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, so that was Cage. I would say the intro to Cage is one of the most iconic moments in Deering Gray discography. It's one of those things that you never forget if you've heard it.
Yeah, that music box.
Yeah.
And it there is a very high likelihood that for a lot of people, this was one of their first Visual Kei songs that they got even exposed to.
Yeah, I think so as well. It was, part of the sort of like J-Rocker starter pack for a lot of years.
I wondered how far we're going to get to before we mention J-Rock on this podcast, and I think we made up to episode 5.
Yeah, but that's kind of how people labeled us VK fans back in the day. We were just J-Rockers.
And I want you people to know that you're wrong.
Yeah, but this was one of those songs that I think a lot of people had like an MP3 of early in their careers, so to speak.
Oh, this shit went into my iPod shuffle so fast.
Yeah, I think even you, James, probably heard it before, I suspect.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, this one was super nostalgic listening to it. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this one for sure. It's one of the one of the most iconic songs for me.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well how the chorus is heavily borrowed from the song Toge by Kuroyume. But it doesn't really bother me because I feel like the rest of the song kind of stands on its own.
Oh, fucking shit. I totally didn't catch that, actually. I mean, I knew about it before, but I forgot about it.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting tidbit. And of course, the classic bass solo has to be mentioned. Like, I know some people who play bass who, like, when they were learning, it was one of the first things they really tried hard to learn was the bass solo on Cage.
Toshio is so fucking good on this album throughout.
Yeah, I mean, I think when they recorded this, they really realized how lucky they were to get him instead of Kisaki.
What are you saying, that Kisaki drawing like 10 people into a house with Mirage at the time didn't make them go like, oh geez, we just got this young guy?
Yeah, exactly. Darren Gray was playing Budokan and Osaka-yo, and Kisaki was doing, the numbers that Osaka Muse or something like that.
Kisaki was trying to get people to get bottle service.
Yeah.
I think if I said something is the best song on the album, I'm gonna cancel all of this, and this is probably the best song on the album. It's like the centerpiece of the entire thing. Everything just comes together in that there's like everything from all the other tracks, maybe except for like some heavy Nagoya riffing, but it's super ambitious. The piano refrain, distortion, electronic fuzz, just a lot of cool production elements, and the orchestra for the final chorus is spot on. If Yoshiki was responsible, it's the best thing he ever made. Well, at least it's in the top 3.
And once again you have those Eroguro-esque things going on in the PV with the doctor and the surgery and all those weird masks and girls and stuff.
Yeah, it's so grotesque, by the way. My favorite PV on the album, actually. But yeah, I mean, when I was looking at that PV just now, I was like, this has to be the goriest thing in Visual Kei up to this point. Obviously, there's been blood and it's been like bloody white coats, but not to this level.
What is the subgenre of Visual Kei that's just like doctors or like lab coats, like sex android? Like, there's a name for that.
Yeah, I kind of forgot. I know it exists, but I think it's extremely dumb because it's such a small niche.
It's like 3 bands. One of them is Sex Android.
And Lulu is another one.
Yeah. But I like that aesthetic, though. It's cool. And you can see that in this PV.
Yeah, and I think that's like an homage to Autism by Kuroyume.
Yeah, I would say
so. The hairstyle is quite similar as well, and the makeup. On Kyo, I mean.
I mean, they were still at the point when they were doing some tribute-esque stuff, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Nah, to me, like the entire GAUZE era is just like their take on Kuroyume in 98, 99, It's not a bad thing, it's a great thing. Obviously, they had their own stuff to contribute to that, but, the influence is very obvious. I have to mention the wonderful guitar effect on the main riff. It's very nice to look at on a mode of GAUZE because the camera actually like cuts to a close-up of him pressing the guitar pedal. I don't know, I got some weird satisfaction from looking at it.
Yeah, I feel that.
It's, by the way, the best performance on the DVD as well. Kyo really kills the chorus.
For Cage?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think during the tour, Cage was one of those songs that were kind of hit and miss. I have really good memories of some performances of Cage, but for others, I feel like it was more like the band just standing around. So I think they got lucky and filmed one of the better performances of the song.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really lend itself to the type of movement that they had already been doing for years and years by that point. It's sort of that, Visual Kei stage choreography stuff that works, which Kyo was doing a lot, especially when this was still new, but it wasn't doing almost at all in 2010 to 2015, I guess, when it started coming back.
Yeah, that's a good point. Alright, so that was Tsumi Tobatsu. And this might be certainly one of the most aggressive tracks on the album, but I would also say that the lyrical content might be the most controversial. This was one of those songs that people probably were quite upset by at the time, since it's about violating a minor.
Yeah, if the visuals were not so grotesque that it was unique, it's definitely the lyrical subject matter. It's so dark that it veers into absurdity, at least for Western sensibilities. It's a different kind of shocking that what we're used to when someone mentions like shock rock. We think of, I don't know, someone not eating the vegetables and tearing up the Bible, and not like child molestation. It's like X was like, Mom, look at my spiky hair, but Dear Grey is like being sought after by Interpol.
Yeah.
We're really missing out on the pedo songs in the West. We just got Lost Prophets.
Oh, Jesus, that's a rough reference.
Thanks, bro.
So James, do you want to give your impressions first on this one?
Yeah. Well, despite the lyrics, I really do like this song, and the intro is really good. The guitars are awesome, and it does that thing that you were talking about earlier with like the two guitars sort of interwoven and playing separate parts that form together. It does that really well.
Yeah, it's the second song on the album with that jagged, heavy dueling guitars and Nagoya style screaming, and it's fucking great.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like you said, it's definitely, the riffing is in some ways reminiscent of the first track, Schweinoise, in terms of, the way the guitars form together to make one coherent melody. And it's kind of nice as well, I think, how stark the contrast is between the very rough verses and then this very nice... almost poppy chorus.
I think on Miyaku, actually, they were sort of perfecting that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And they also, unless I'm completely stupid, I think Miyaku is in a different time signature as well.
Okay, I have to address the elephant in the room, which is the morbidly awful remake.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point to make. I mean, the remake of this song was... I would say completely unnecessary, because it's only a remake in sort of the sense that it shares the title and some very, very, very basic structural features. It's not the same song in any other way, and I think it shouldn't have been done.
Yeah, it's the worst of their slow brooding songs from that era. It easily has the least stuff, and then there is the censored version, and then there's the uncensored version. Whoa, that's a Freudian slip. No, because he's screaming like pedophilia, and I'm like, oh, bro, come on, give it a break. At least they don't play it live.
The
How
new
is
version,
it censored? Like, is it bleeped, or do they just cut the lyrics?
They just cut the lyrics, yeah.
they play it live all the time, though. That's the problem. The new version.
Do? I thought they cut that.
I've seen it. I think I've seen it live like 20 times. But yeah, I was going to mention about this actually as well, like an anecdote from the Mode of GAUZE tour, that when they did the first show, it was fan club only, but I had already bought tickets to a different gig, so I couldn't go to it. And And then I saw the set list, and I saw they played the original version of Tsumitabatsu. And I thought like, oh wow, I never expected that. So I just assumed that it was like a fan club gig only thing, that they wouldn't do it at the other shows. Because usually they never played the original version of a song, they have remade. And then the day after, I was at my first show of the tour that I was attending, and early in the set, the remake came on. They played the remake early in the set, and I was like, oh, well, I guess I was right. I'm not going to hear the original version. This sucks. And then later in the set, they actually played the original version as well. So they kind of trolled everyone into expecting them to only play the remake, and then they played both versions in the same set.
That's a fantastic practical trolling thing on their part. And actually, I'm quoting Kyo from an interview where he says that if we did that, which is playing all the new versions and changing all the songs, people who really love this album would complain so much. We didn't want to deal with that situation, so we just played them in original versions.
I mean, that's nice. Although that's not exactly true.
No, it's not. Yeah, the Zan is the newer version. I guess they basically, use their artistic freedom on that front.
Yeah, and they played the new version of Masochist of Decadence as well.
That's right. I guess they felt that it was close enough.
Yeah, those two are kind of harmless in my opinion.
Speaking of which,
yeah, so that was Masochist of Decadence.
Why is it named that? Why is that a typo?
I mean, some say it's a typo, but others say it's a conscious choice that they wanted to spell it that way. I think it's up for interpretation, but I do believe it might be a typo, yeah.
I've heard rumors of censorship, but that would be quite absurd.
Masochist? That'd be a weird word to censor.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Especially when otherwise the song is very gnarly. Not only in its content, but in its social values, which still comes up in the Western fan base every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think a surprising thing about this song is how old it is. Like, this song was made already in the mid-97. They did like a bunch of shows called Masochist of Decadence show back in 97, like 2-man lives with some bands. And I mean, because to me it's a very ambitious track, like it's a long track and it has a lot of things going on, and it's one of their first sort of attempts at an epic.
Is it also the greatest recontextualization in Visual Kei of all time? Because the main riff, melody, whatever, is painfully obviously from Kuroyume's Yuri no Hanataba. But they took it and they gave it this disturbed, dreary quality, so I think overall it's a success.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you lift the floorboards a bit, you can probably find a lot of borrowed bits in these songs. I have to say, though, I think that the interlude is a bit dragging on this. It does overstay its welcome. I don't think the song needs to be 9 minutes and 22 seconds long, which is probably why the live version these days is about 5.5 minutes or something around there, which I think is better.
That's appropriate, I think.
Yeah, but the atmosphere is very, very nice. It's very suffocating. It's one of the first songs they have that has this very, like you said, like dreary or heavy, and it sort of weighs on you listening to it.
That's kind of the themes that they would work on later in their career.
Yeah, in a way, it does have a similar sort of feel, like that song like Beelzebub or something later had, of course, to a much higher degree because they were a much more proficient band at that time. But if you hear the new updated version of this track, it works really well in pair with one of those tracks, like the remake of Tsumitobatsu or Beelzebub, for example.
Does it still have the baby? The new version?
The baby is sadly missing, I believe.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
no.
and the sitar intro is playback as well. They don't actually bring a sitar up on stage.
Oh, is that a real sitar? I wasn't sure if that was.
It's not real. As far as I remember, I think it was actually recorded with a pedal that imitates the sound of a sitar.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, as far as I remember. Once again, don't quote me on this, and if I'm wrong, feel free to correct us on Twitter. It's Alexius managing that, so he will take the blame.
I'm going to have to deal with the fallout. Yeah, I think the new version is not so bad, but I will always prefer the pristine Moon Fairy guitar of early Visual Kei, so the album version is my pick.
Yeah, I get that as well. I think that's fair. I have to say, though, that seeing this song live is some of the most intense moments I've had at concert. I remember at one of the GAUZE tour shows, I was kind of like front center, and several times during the very long interlude, like Kyo was like staring dead at me, and that felt very sort of shaky.
I think it's actually his best vocal performance on the entire album. It's also the closest to what he would do later. Very spontaneous, sounds like it's done in one take, which are kind of Kyo's trademarks, I think, later on.
Yeah, I agree, definitely.
Yeah, I would agree. This song is definitely a good showcase for his vocal techniques because instrumentally it's not that elaborate compared to the other songs. So his voice really stands out, and it's like he's just very expressive in it.
Yeah, he does allow himself to sort of like go off the beaten path a bit. All right, so that was Yokan, and what can you say about Yokan? It's one of to me, it's the best pop song on this album. I much prefer it to Yurameki. It's one of those songs I could never get tired of, and it has always brought like a smile on my face, to get a bit personal. Whenever I hear it, it's just poppy in a very nice sort of way.
It's again feminism-esque and quite a shift in tone to the last track.
Yeah, I think the placement is quite interesting there. Maybe it's to sort of like raise your spirits towards the end of the album.
It's not to turn off the legions of fans.
Yeah, though I think the lyrical content, as usual, isn't all fun and games, but still it feels sort of hopeful, the tone of it.
Yeah, that's what I think in Visual Kei, like, especially like in the 90s, even though it was poppy, it was still, darker.
Yeah.
I think this is my favorite song in the album, actually.
Wow.
And probably one of my favorite Dorian Gray songs. Definitely one I really remember liking back in the day, and I still like it. And the intro reminds me of Kagura. I know I said that a bunch of times in the last episode. But
Everything reminds you of Kagura.
I mean, I could get that. I'm not a huge fan, and I haven't heard a lot of Kagura, but I think that I can sort of get that since they also had this sort of pop-esque vibe at times.
All I'm thinking is something like Miss Moonlight, the other music video songs from feminism.
Well, you've just been listening to... you missed that this was a Dorian Gray episode, so you just listened to Kuroyuma.
Yeah. Oh, this is a Griva episode.
Yeah, of course.
It's just a prologue.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention as well that... surprising to me, at least, was that Yokan always felt like a song that the band was very happy to play during the GAUZE tour. Like, it was usually towards the end of the set, and even Kyo seemed like really enjoying performing it.
I think it actually lends to them better than, let's say, Rise of Death or something. It's kind of like a Western fan base meme where they just sort of project themselves, like thinking like, oh, that's poppy. They probably don't like it. Even though I don't think it's ever that simple. If anything, stuff that they like the least is the stuff that sounds super dated, Visual Kei, 90s, etc. That seems to be the stuff that they avoid the most.
Yeah, because they have a few of those like happy tracks that at least on the surface the band looks like they're enjoying. Like when I went to the GAUZE tour, for example, they really seem to have fun playing Jessica as well. Like they would like run around and goof off a bit, and it's also a poppy song, probably the most poppy song of that era. So I don't think it's based on a song being poppy or whatever. I think it's based on other things. It could also be based on lyrical content or something, who knows?
Yeah, I think that stuff plays a huge part. It's just, again, like how Western people see this stuff. There's hard music and then there's soft music, basically.
Yeah, it's a very nice song. I couldn't do like a detailed analysis of it, but I've always been a fan.
The music video is neat.
Yeah, the music video is neat, very white.
Yeah, it's super white. Reminds me of, again, one Penicillin PV, I think, and 99. I don't know. It's cool stuff, though. It's actually kind of unique when, set against all the other music videos of the collection.
Oh, now I realized that we forgot to talk about, I think, when we talked about Jealous in the last episode, I think we forgot to talk about the Griva version, which was like a shot-by-shot re-recording of the Jealous PV.
See, that's how you should do it. You need to own up to it.
Yeah, just, re-record your idol's music video and hope no one notices.
Well, it's kind of like the Griva 2.0 band that's coming out, Onitokage, where it's like no Griva members, but they're playing Griva songs.
Yeah, labeled as covers. I wonder how long it will be called covers and how
Yeah,
long,
the cover will just slowly slide out from the set list, and it will just actually have the song.
Yeah.
While its members have promised us peace, they have led us to war, heedless of the platform upon which they were elected.
All right, so that was Mask. This song is very interesting. For the longest time, I never knew what the intro was. There's this antiquated recording of a man speaking, and I never knew what it was. I kind of assumed for the longest time that it was just something someone had recorded or some stock footage from some vault or something, but it's actually quite a controversial thing. It's from a speech by Charles Lindbergh to the America First movement during World War II, when he was complaining about how Roosevelt had led America into World War II.
Ooh, yikes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not something you expect to find in a Visual Kei band from the 90s. Like, it's kind of an obscure reference for a Japanese person to pick up, I think.
Does it tie into the song at all?
Yeah, it's kind of like a political song, isn't it?
Mask,
K, politicians, they lie. The usual. It's always the same shit, isn't it? Actually, some of the footage from the PV and just the politicalness of it reminds me of Matina Era Gazette. And actually, we were talking about that riffing style on the last episode on like S. And even It's Okay or something. I feel like you have a little bit of that same vibe in here.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially the intro riff. And it's a very fun song, Mask. It's like, it's very danceable, it's very energetic, and it has all those aspects that make it a great live song. It's also one of the few Dear and Grey songs that has like a well-established foodie. So everyone in the audience during those Mode of GAUZE lives were actually doing this very elaborate foodie dance to the song, which kind of surprised me because I never experienced that at any other Dear and Grey lives.
That's interesting because if you look at the last Indies live and the Budokan and stuff, Kyo is just doing furi constantly, but I guess none of it really picked up.
It might have picked up and then might have been like phased out. I don't know. It's possible at least. I saw some people during the Mode of Macabre tour trying to do some footy for songs like An Injection, but those were old fans, I feel, who were around back in the day. And since there was no video footage of it, none of the newer fans actually knew the moves. So there was like just a few girls here and there, older ladies doing some elaborate dances, and everyone else just kind of like enjoying on their own.
That's hardcore. So far we got a song with like anti-abortion. And this one,
I think
remains to
it's-
be seen how it's interpreted. Probably depends a lot on the lyrics, but just for the sake of, just on the surface, non-intervention.
Yeah, that's kind of how, at least how the speech would position the song, which is fair.
All jokes aside, anti-imperialism is not a new theme in Visual Kei. There's actually quite a few songs with similar themes. Usually when they talk about like World War II and Japan, it does feel like there's a lot of regret involved.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're definitely not condoning, the atomic bombing, for example.
No, definitely not. And of course the ending, like as James, you mentioned something about the ending of the song as well.
Yeah, that outro kind of comes out of nowhere. I almost thought it was a different song when I was listening to it last night. It's kind of like it sounds like a Nirvana style riff.
Oh, right? That's what you mean. Yeah, kind of. Fuck. Dear and Grain is ruined. The podcast is over.
No, I mean, I get it, but yeah, it does feel very tacked on, and I think that's the reason why they stopped playing that part live as well. The live version doesn't have that ending.
Oh yeah, I mean, I like it. Like
that all but confirms it's from Nirvana.
Yeah.
But overall, it's a very nice song. It's also one of those tracks I often play at parties because it's very danceable and high energy. Just a good track in general. Alright, so that was Sun, and I think this warrants, Alexi, for you to tell us a bit about Death Mask clones in Visual Kei.
Oh boy, but I have to say this might be the best one.
Yeah, I would say so as well, most likely at least. There's some contenders, but the most famous one at least by far.
Yeah, the music video is just brilliant. I think that's sort of what Deer and Grey did in general. It took a Nagoya Gay formula, right? But they took it to the turn of the millennium. There's all those like visual themes from that era and shit ton more in budget. It looks awesome. I think I said the Cage PV was my favorite, but no, it has to be this one. I just forgot about it. Yeah, great stuff.
I think it's interesting that this is the only Death Mask clone that also were recorded when a band had a huge budget, because most of the other bands who did own versions. And by the way, just for everyone who's wondering, by Death Mask clone we mean songs inspired by Kuroyume's early song Shinai Naru Death Mask, which has this very iconic riff, which a lot of bands made their own sort of take on later in the following years. But most of them did it like on their earliest stuff, so the budget were kind of low, and Deer and Grey managed to do it for their major debut, so they had all kinds of money to throw on this video to make it amazing.
Yeah, it is an older song. Like they had an earlier version of it already. And another time when they did something similar to this was like Karma. But yeah, then they stopped that almost completely and they just emphasized that signature riffing style that we talked about before on Shuai no Izu and Tsumitabatsu.
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning that Sun is also a very old track. It was played already in their first one-man live in May of 97. So they actually had this song written out before they released their first mini.
It sounds exactly like it.
Yeah, that's true. It's I think they did like how do you say, like tighten it up a bit and added some extra twists, but the core of the song is definitely the same as it was in 97. But it's just an amazing song. It's very high energy, and I think the re-recording as well is one of their best re-recordings. I'm a huge fan, so when they played the new version during the 2014 tour, I wasn't sad. I mean, it would have been cool to hear the original, but I wasn't sad because the remake is such a beast of a track live. It's so much fun.
I'm not like a huge fan of it. There's a small groove in the riff. The tone is lower. Kyo can growl instead of scream, so I would love to hear them try to do the original one again. Because recently when he's like playing the originals, or like when they did the Withering mode of tour, he actually didn't do deep growls almost at all, presumably because he didn't do them at the time of the actual recording of the album.
Yeah, James, do you have any impressions on Sun?
I like this one a lot. It's probably one of the heaviest tracks on the album, just with the percussion and like the guitars are just super sharp.
Yeah, I think sharp is a good way to describe the guitar sound on this. And it's very typical of this kind of tracks as well. They usually have a very sharp guitar sound to them.
90s Nagoya, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Early 90s Nagoya.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Not the mid, or God forbid, the late.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's move on to the final track of the album. Okay, so that was Akuro no Oka, the final real track of the album. And I think it finishes up the album pretty nicely. It's like a classic, beautiful Visual Kei ballad with a lot of those flares that you would expect from one. Really nice guitar riffs and some acoustic guitars and very emotional singing.
The very scenic PV also fits with it very well. Some people might have issue with how long it is. Personally, I'm fine. Don't listen to it that much, but when I do, I have no issues with it.
Yeah, I think it has it's very nostalgic from my childhood for me, because it was one of those tracks, like, if I was feeling sad or something, I would put it on and just feel stuff, you know?
It's like, oh, broke up with another girlfriend.
Nah, this was, I think, even younger than that, like, when I was, like, 14, 15 and that kind of stuff, you know, when everything was a sadness. Those very tough early teenage years, I think this song was one of my go-to tracks to be sad to. And also I have to mention that in the PV, Kaoru has an incredible huge sombrero hat, which I wish he would wear again. I think he would do great with it.
You should have brought it for the mode of life.
Yeah, exactly. Just when
I would have marked out.
Yeah, when they came on stage for the encore to do Akuro no Oka, he would just come out and put on this huge sombrero hat and play this track.
Yeah, gotta mention, there's a very, very nice use of violin in the song, which hints kind of at some sort of like a lunacy influence. That's probably coming off from Yoshiki, although they would use violin later as well.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I mean, they certainly had access to people who could play violin, and Yoshiki always likes to add some classical elements into the songs. So I certainly do believe he could have influenced those decisions.
And I mean, yeah, they had Sugiza play violin for them later on too.
Yeah, sadly, for a very underwhelming track, but you know.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. There is a bit in here that sounds just a little bit like Lunacy's Genesis of the Mind. Had to just throw it out there.
Yeah, and I think we don't really have to say any... Oh, wait, sorry, I forgot to ask. James, what was your impressions on this song? I almost call it quits. Sorry.
Who cares what I think?
Yeah, exactly. Apparently a lot of people, because one of the greatest feedbacks
I
get...
that's always the
Why
feedback
does anyone
I get
care
is...
what I think? I like all the opposite things.
Can't these fucking Euros shut the fuck up and can we hear someone with a good accent?
No, they're like, can James please talk more? It's one of the most common feedbacks I get. So, yeah, so here you go. Tell us about Akuro no Oka.
All right, well, you know what? I don't have that much to say, honestly. I think it's long, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. I think it's appropriately long, but I like it. It's a good track. Like I have to be in the mood for it. I think like I'm not always gonna put it on, but if I'm in the mood just to like chill out and like you said, feel things for like 9 minutes, then yeah, I'll put it on.
Yeah.
If you're not in your feelies, you're not gonna put it on.
Yeah, exactly. It's and also it's as I said, the length is kind of misrepresented here. It's actually closer to 7 minutes, I believe, without the outro. The mode of Eve thing is on the end, so it's actually more like 7 minutes long, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
I think a final note would be that this is another song that they brought back a few times. Most notoriously the America gigs, which we mentioned before, but also the Androgynous Live, which Fredrik was lucky enough to attend.
Yeah, indeed. Like because the Androgynous shows were labeled after 2 songs by Dir Grey and Piero, which had sort of like similar names. It was one was called like Megido no Oka, which is named after a Piero song, which they didn't play on the live, named after their song. And the other one was Akro no Oka. So both bands had a song called like Oka, like mountain. And so Dir Grey actually played Akro no Oka, which was a nice touch. It was the first time since 2014 I had seen it, so it was pretty neat.
It was worth the money.
Oh yeah, definitely. Those shows were amazing. And they also brought back Phil for those shows, which is also one of my favorite tracks. But yeah, we're not going to discuss the Androgynous gigs today. We have plenty of opportunities for concert memories in the future.
Closing thoughts?
Yeah, and I think we don't really need to discuss the outro because nothing really happens in it. So I think we should just like sum up our impressions of the whole album. So by popular demand, I guess, James, you go first. What's your summarized thoughts on the album?
I think overall it's a really solid album. There's a lot of bangers on it. And I mean, I don't think there's anything that I particularly dislike. What was the song I disagreed on with you guys? I already forgot.
It was track number 5. The
304.
Sambyakuyon Go Shitsu. No. Yeah, I mean, that one, like, if I'm listening to this album, I'm very tempted to skip that track. I'm sorry to fans of that track, but it's just something about it just makes it very tempting to skip. And then, what's the other really long one? Oh, yeah, Masochist of Decadence. That one I might skip too.
Yeah, it's a great song, but I get that you would skip it sometimes. I certainly have skipped it a bunch of times as well.
Yeah, but other than that, I'm down with every other track. It's good.
Yeah. Okay, Alexi, what's your summarized take on the album?
Fucking great. It's to me, it has been for a long time like a culmination of the late 90s, like an end of an era in a way. This style almost kind of died with them. Not that it didn't exist afterwards, but I think commercially all the big bands of the time moved on to something else. It would take time for the classic late 90s labels like Key Party, Matina, Soleil, etc. to die. But musically, they already started transitioning a little bit before the big implosion in 2002. And so in a way, it's actually like a very formulaic Visual Kei album. But it fucking helps that all the songs are bangers. Like, the level of the songs is very high. There is a reason why it's still constantly brought up. There are bands like Griva that just steal songs outright because everyone knows them. They're classics. They're great. In aesthetic terms, it's like a very definition of visual shock. Mainstream appeal, relatively speaking, but very bloody.
Yeah, I think that you summed up some of my thoughts very well. I also kind of have this feeling that it's the pinnacle and also in some way the end of the classic late 90s sound. Like you said, some bands kept on the sound a bit longer, but I would say it never really peaked in the same way as it did with this album, both in terms of sound and sales. This might be like the most polished and well-structured take on this sound.
I think it could easily be the best-selling Visual Kei album with such a hard style if you don't count the early metal influence stuff from the early 90s.
Yeah. So I think it definitely deserves a listen from any person who seriously considers themselves a Visual Kei fan. Even if you prefer like the later stuff, like stuff from the 2010s or something like that. I think it's worth to give this a shot just to sort of see where a lot of it came from, because a lot of those bands were heavily influenced by this.
Yeah, the musicianship is still there. It's significantly improved from Missa, and also this is one of their few albums with an impeccable production job.
Yeah, like we mentioned in the beginning, this is very good sound on it. And before we finish up this pod, we're just going to talk briefly about the GAUZE Tour Final DVD as well, and mention some stuff about that. So, Alexi, what were your takes on that?
It's not my favorite. It's better than the Budokan line for sure. They've improved a lot as an arena rock band. You can tell that the label's investment in time and money has being repaid, audience is going wild, and they got their money's worth too with the extended versions of Aoitsuki, Garden, Zan.
Yeah,
to me, looking at the DVD, it's boring as fuck. I cannot sit through it. People love this DVD, by the way, which I've always been surprised. I still think the performance is very formulaic, like sort of this Visual Kei, like they're like kind of like statues. They start running into the crowds and stuff, which shows some spontaneity.
Yeah,
but I think it's not these are not their best performances.
I think my problem with it is that I would have preferred to see these songs in a DVD from a smaller venue. Even though they certainly have improved, definitely, like in terms of their professionalism, they actually fill out the stage sometimes now and not just stand like they did in the last Indies live. But still, like, it feels like these songs were made for smaller venues. Like, you want to see a DVD of this filmed in a small place where, you know, Kyo can like grab the ceiling and stuff like that and do crazy dances on the stage and things like that.
Yeah, think of X's last live. That's such an arena rock moment, you know. You couldn't like imagine it in a small venue. Like the arena really makes the show.
Yeah.
And with this one, it feels like they sort of outgrew themselves in popularity. One funny note that I made is that you can very often clearly see the teleprompter that Kyo is reading the lyrics from. You can actually see the lyrics on the teleprompter and him looking at it because the camera is behind him.
Yeah, that's kind of nice.
And he also has a Batman mic stand.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid, I was a huge fan of this show just for all the visuals and stuff. And while I do think it's a classic concert, I think there's some faults. Like you said, there's 2 songs that drag on way too long, and instead they could have fit in a few of the tracks that didn't make it. Like half of Missa is missing, so to speak, and I mean, like you could have fit in like Erode and Sangeki no Yoru and Karma and those tracks which were scrapped. I mean, if you just halved the length of Aoitsuki, you could fit all 3 of those tracks in the set and keep it the same length. So I think there were some kind of weird decisions made, but still, it's a very impressive achievement considering this concert was just 2.5 years after their first one-man live.
So, like it was teased on Twitter, Fredrik went to the Mode of GAUZE tour and saw pretty much every single live of the tour?
Yeah, every show except one.
Okay, so I gotta ask you something. Did they smile?
Yes, there were smiles. There were certainly smiles. And I have to mention that people always say online and stuff that the band was very unenthusiastic during the shows and really didn't care at all. But that wasn't my impression at all. I think there was a few songs here and there that the band seemed less than enthusiastic to play. But overall, I think they did at least a very convincing job and had a good emotion and showmanship during the shows. I especially remember that Kyo was very emotional during Akuro no Oka up in Sapporo, which was a big moment for me.
Did you watch the DVD?
Yeah, I have seen it like twice, I think, so I'm not an expert on it. I kind of want to preserve my impressions in person, but yeah, I have seen it a few times.
I think it's a little unfortunate how soon they did this tour, because I think the production for the future mode of tours improved by quite a bit.
Yes, they should have definitely waited and done it along with the other mode of tours. I think it would have been a lot better then. The band feel like they were in a much better place during those tours than they were in 2014 in general.
Yeah, I think everyone improved. Some people say that Cure was better around this time, but I have to give a hard disagree. But he does still a very good job in some tracks, like I mentioned Cage before, and there is a pretty decent Rinkaku on this as well.
Yeah.
Which is a very, very difficult song to perform. Funny story, I wanted to make some research about like what they thought of this tour, and I found an interview where Kyo, again, is asked about the GAUZE tour. And the exchange goes that looking back at GAUZE tour, how was it? It wasn't very fun. How come? My own mode was not GAUZE. Not at all. So I guess he was performing it as a professional. But from my understanding, the other members have no issues.
I think, I think I would guess, based on my personal thoughts, that maybe Kaoru as well might not enjoy it much. But I think Dai and Shinya certainly are big fans of the GAUZE material. So they at least had fun, I'm sure. And I think that Kyo had fun on occasion as well. But maybe he didn't enjoy the tour as a whole. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he's always exaggerating a little bit. Like, he doesn't want to come to Europe at all, but at least he can, cover it up. But a funny note also is that Kaoru is not a big fan of the GAUZE album in general.
Yeah.
He says that he's not very happy with it in retrospect and somewhat disappointed on the outlook of the album.
Wow. Yeah.
Which I understand. On other interviews by Toshio, for example, they openly note that they really found themselves and started exploring music much better during Macabre. And you can hear it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think it's about time we start wrapping it up.
Yeah, I think we can conclude that the album is great. It's a classic.
Yeah, I would say so. I think, I'm feeling the fever kind of set in again. No, but...
Fredrik is dying in front of your ears.
Hey everyone, let me tell you about raresut.net. Raresut is your source for rare and not so rare imported Japanese rock, metal, and Visual Kei outside of Japan. They do a really good job of matching the price on most items with used Visual Kei shops in Japan, so it's a really valuable resource if you're collecting this stuff and you're outside of Japan and want to save on import fees. Something I want to draw attention to is the new Raresut merch. They've got Corgi mascot stickers now, and these were made by some friends of mine, and I think they did a really fantastic job. So if you like stickers, I highly recommend tossing one in your cart next time you're shopping at Raresut, and you can slap this majestic creature on your laptop, your guitar, or whatever you want to put a sticker on, your vacuum cleaner. Oh, by the way, new customers will get 10% off their order if they enter the code VKPC when they're checking out. I believe when they're checking out. I think that's how it works. Oh yeah, follow Alexi on Twitter at the VK Podcast and tell him that he's mispronouncing Piro, and also give us any other kind of feedback you want there. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want your friends to get more into Visual Kei, please recommend us to them. You can catch new episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all the other places.
Okay, and this was everything we had for you guys today, so I hope you enjoyed this slightly late episode. Once again, I apologize, but you can't really tell when these kind of things happen, so hopefully you had a lot of fun, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Goodbye, and thank you for listening.
No?
No.
Boo.
Okay, sayonara.